What's going on, everyone? Dave Knittel from Bros Talking Soccer here again with you on YouTube. I am joined by Paul McGarrigy and David Turner from Over the Bar. Guys, say hello so the people on YouTube can get a look at you.
Hello. Hello.
There you go. So Paul is on the right, and I think that's how YouTube viewers will see it also. I don't know. I never know what when it's flipped or whatnot, but Paul's I think on the right and David's on the left.
Yeah, Paul's
yes, there you go. And so we will launch into an interview with these guys. They're awesome. They have a really cool website, Over the Bar. But I have, for those of you tuning in on YouTube, I have the chat feature up here in the background. So please feel free to interact with us if you have questions for them and whatnot. Send them, and I'd be happy to ask them. So with that, guys, you ready to get to the interview?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Hey everybody, Dave here, and I am joined by Paul McGarrigy and David Turner from Over the Bar. Guys, welcome to Bros Talking Soccer. How you doing today?
Hi, great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to have you guys on. I know, you guys are always incredibly supportive of us on social media, and we always try to return the favor. And so, I greatly appreciate that. Can you guys tell us a little bit about Over the Bar?
Yeah, sure. From me to go?
Yeah, you go.
Okay, I'll handle it. Yeah, so it's an independent fan site that we started probably 18 months ago, maybe a bit
nearly 2 years ago.
Nearly 2 years ago it'll be. Yeah, it started up just us two and our friend Mark. We wanted to be able to discuss and write about football. And then we took on our other friend David Pearson, who's been on your show before. And since then, it's kind of snowballed. We built up a bit of a social media following, try and cover as much as we can or as much as we want to write about. It's very much, we cover our own interests and try and start debates. And we can be quite opinionated at times, and sometimes one of us will write something the other one won't agree with, and that. And yeah, we've got a couple of other writers now. I should mention is Syriac Jim covers Italian football for us, and my friend Matt, who writes about the championship, and a couple of others as well. So it's going good.
Yeah, awesome. And then the whole concept was more just to get our opinions out there a little bit. It's one of those where I think a lot of the time in football you hear the same voices over and over again, and you don't often hear that much from fans. So it's more a case of getting our thoughts and our ideas out there. What
makes it easier for us as well is because we all support different clubs. Not just me and David, but all of us involved with it, and not all of the clubs that we support are at the same level in the football pyramid either. So it means there's a range of perspectives. It's good.
Yeah, I love it. So, so that kind of touches on what I wanted to talk about next is kind of your guys' relationships and kind of how Over the Bar got its start. And you touched on that a little bit there. How did you choose to go, kind of blog website type of thing versus something else? Are you guys professional writers? How did you guys kind of make the decision to go the direction you originally went?
It's very nice of you to compliment us by mistaking us for professionals there. No, it was the easy option, I think, wasn't it? And it sort of stems from the fact we would send each other long messages that would end up being sort of rants. So we thought, why don't we channel that into a more positive format? It's come about from that. But we've known each other for 10, 15 years. Yeah. And we've known Mark and Dave as well for near enough 10 years as well.
Awesome. So you're a bunch of buddies talking about the sport. I know I call it soccer, but talking about football, and I love it, and just taking that passion and starting up the project. So yeah, definitely check it out. We have Over the Bar linked in the podcast description. No, podcast show notes and video description. I keep getting those reversed. Yes. So be sure to go check them out. And so you guys started mainly with the UK leagues, and I know you expanded to Serie A, and you touch on checking out the website, the Chinese league and MLS league or MLS to a certain extent. How did you decide which leagues to cover? Or is it more just kind of, what you guys are interested in?
Well, I think we started out with what we knew. So we started off primarily kind of Premier League. Mark, who started the blog with us, lived in China for a while. So he kind of picked up the Chinese side of things. And then as we've kind of grown, we've got contributors in. Obviously, the MLS has grown, so there's been a bit more of interest in that in the UK. So we've picked up on that a little bit. But it's grown organically around kind of our own interests in a way.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, we all support different clubs as well. And all right, we're all English really, so it helps that it's easy for us to, like David say, write about what we know. But we do have interests in other leagues as well. And if there's a particular topic or club, we're not afraid to share our opinion on it, I should say, not have an opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we've got more contributors on that can add their take on things.
Awesome. So yeah, that's been fantastic to see. So, and how has everything been with the site? I know you guys have been growing a bunch. You know, social media, you've been growing a bunch and adding different leagues and coverage. Any exciting things kind of happened recently? Try to keep it positive here. So yeah, just anything you want to maybe brag about a little bit.
It's all positive, isn't it, really?
I think one of the biggest, and this is Paul mainly, is there's been a lot more looking at the political side of football, a lot more looking at how UEFA's kind of ran and organised, primarily, and then FIFA, of course, above that. But it's that angle that it's not just on the pitch, you know, it's kind of looking at football as the kind of the full business aspect as well, because that's such an impact on the sport.
Yeah, and being able to, well, we don't have any barriers on what we can write about, I suppose, really. That means that something that we might think only one of us or only two of us have an opinion on, because of the power of Twitter and that it gets around, and you can be surprised at what gets shared. Something that you thought, oh, that'll just be a little small piece, won't get very many views, can turn around and surprise you. And we've got a few different ideas going forward that we want to do. They're still in the early stages and things, but we're always looking at new ways to grow. And yeah, what's really rewarding about it is the engagement from people, and how, like I said, it can surprise you. Something that you thought was just your unique little opinion, other people share it because they either agree or disagree, but it's good, you know?
I love it. And so for those who are watching on YouTube, you know, a bunch of books behind me are soccer books that are more kind of along the lines of whether it's political or business. And that's what I love about the sport as well. You know, just the breadth of what it touches kind of in societies and cultures. So that, you know, it's really cool that you guys do that and that you've given yourselves the freedom to kind of just explore all of that stuff. So that's really exciting to hear. Sticking kind of along those lines, what's been, you know, your most favorite thing that you've gotten to do because of the website? Have you gotten, I don't know, a special interview? Have you gotten press credentials somewhere? You know, is there anything in particular that sticks out as maybe the favorite thing you've gotten to do?
Coming on this show today, this is the pinnacle. I don't know. It's nice when, for me personally, I've wrote a couple of articles that have been shared by writers that I look up to and sports journalists that I have a lot of respect for myself. So seeing them like, share, or even comment on it, there's, like David mentioned, particularly the UEFA articles and the FIFA ones, they're the ones that seem to have gone a long way for me, and getting some acknowledgement from people who are quite well established in the game has been a big compliment and only encourages me. I don't know if you've got a personal thing, your favourite thing you've done with the site.
I don't think I have, but I think kind of following on from that, we've had kind of like Paul has had from like Ian Cheeseman, who's a Manchester City kind of correspondent and is now independent. He was working for BBC. Has offered kind of a bit of kind of tutorage almost in the past and stuff like that. So we've kind of been able to connect. We've also had kind of, as Paul said, fairly well-known kind of journalists and people related to the sport kind of follow us or retweet things, which is kind of quite a nice feeling that they're actually reading the stuff.
Yeah.
But we hope they are, either that or they just like the tweet.
No, whenever you get a retweet or a like from someone with a blue tick, you want to check who they are, and there's been quite a couple of times where I've been like, oh, no way, such and such already. Like Gary James is a huge football historian in this country. He's wrote countless books, and he's liked a couple of my articles, and it's just like a huge pat on the back, really. But,
That's awesome. That's really cool. I always love hearing that stuff. So I love asking that question. Going back to the website. So in addition to all the awesome content you guys have, you also do these really cool quizzes. So on Bros Talking Soccer, we have a trivia question each week. So we love the trivia stuff. What was kind of your inspiration behind starting those quizzes, and how do you put them together, and how does that kind of work?
Yeah, we both played a part in writing pretty much all of them, haven't we?
Yeah.
We like pub quizzes. We like going and having a few drinks and teasing each other on trivia, but also it was just something fun. And
yeah, it's one of those where it's kind of like positive, the fun aspect of the sport as well. It's like I think everyone enjoys a good quiz every now and again. So it's that kind of idea of finding a topic and kind of researching it in a way where you can kind of provide that information in a different format. And I think quizzes are quite a nice way of learning some stuff that you probably didn't know already. We were supposed to do a Manchester Derby quiz that neither of us really got round to. But yeah, it takes a lot of work to kind of find 10 questions that you think are going to be challenging enough for the wider public. So
yeah, I mean, I work in an office, so that Friday feeling when it's 3 o'clock and you've got 2 hours to kill. You're like, you know what I want? I want a quiz. So we kind of put them in there as well to help our colleagues get through the day, I suppose. I do it mainly because my mum is a huge football nut, so I try and put a couple of questions in there that she won't know the answer to, and it'll drive her mad. So it's mainly just trying to annoy people as well.
I love it. Yeah, and I took one the other day. I didn't do too high. I think I got 5 out of 10. But yeah, there were some tough ones in there. Yeah. Yeah, I think I love the other thing I liked about it was you guys put like mid-table obscurity, or like you have like a soccer related score, of how you did. So yeah, that is just very well done. All right, let's switch gears a little bit, and I'd like to talk to your guys about your fandom. So in the US, we pretty much have just one team per city. That's kind of how we operate from a sporting culture perspective, unless you're maybe in the New York, little bit in Chicago, and maybe LA areas. But pretty much if you're born somewhere, you support the team that you're kind of born into. And I know you guys each support Manchester clubs, but one supports City and one supports United. So I'd like to talk a little bit maybe about your origin story of how you became a fan of the club. Are you born into it from a family perspective? Was it something else? So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, this is one we can both comment on, I suppose, really.
Yeah.
How when you're brought up, you either get taken to, I don't know, if you're from Belfast, you're either Catholic or you're Protestant. In Manchester, you're either red or blue. And yeah, I was brought up in a City family, and didn't really have a choice. And do you know what? The childhood, growing up, I was born in 1990, so for the first 17 years of my life, it was pretty painful. City were awful, but it's all been paid off recently. Like the last decade or so has been amazing. But yeah, you don't get a choice, and the thing is as well, I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't look at. It's very partisan. You don't look at another club and think, oh, I'm gonna support them, because you feel sort of, you feel connected. And the first game you ever get taken to, you're hooked. That was for me anyway. My mum took me when I was 5. City drew 1-1 against Bolton Wanderers at Main Road, and that was it. Couldn't imagine supporting any other club. Even if I was best man at your wedding, you were best man at my wedding, and despite the fact we on Derby Day we don't talk to each other. we still manage to make friendships out of it, but when it comes to football, we're very divided.
Yeah, my story is quite similar. It's one of those where my family United fans, so you're kind of born in it. Your first game that you go to is normally the kind of thing that gets you hooked. I was very fortunate that as a kid I had very similar to Paul, season ticket access, so I was able to go to a lot of games. From I was born a little bit before Paul, so I was born in '87. So from the age of 5, United were winning everything and anything for pretty much the next 15 or so years, 20 years. So it's one of those where I was kind of very lucky to be in the successful years. It's quite notable though the kind of switch in Manchester, that there is a slight kind of maybe people are a little bit more ashamed to say United fans, you know. And there's a lot more clubs in Manchester. A lot of the lower league clubs are actually gaining traction and gaining a lot more support as well. So I think it's kind of United's lack of success over the kind of past 6 or so years, maybe helping other clubs in the region as well.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky, like David said, that in the local area there are so many different clubs you can choose from, and they're all different levels of football as well. I mean, I think 4.5 miles away, we've got Bury Football Club, and then maybe 5 miles another direction, we've got Oldham and Rochdale as well, who are a couple of leagues below City. But it is really, you know, whatever your sort of family brings you up as, you're stuck with, and they take you to your first game, and then that's it. You're christened, you know.
All right, so yeah, that makes sense. And I actually just realized, so you're wearing red and blue. Was that planned, or is that just coincidence?
That was not planned.
No, that's just.
I love it. It's on brand though. So yeah, and I'd like to dive deep into each of the things that you guys kind of talked about. So Paul, you touched on you know, kind of going through the process of City becoming this perennial kind of underdog club into basically one of the most talented teams in Europe now. What was that like from a fan perspective? Were you completely, you know, open to it? Because, you know, we've heard stories about people that, you know, were uncomfortable with that change from being underdog to now favorites in a lot of ways. Were you know, open to it? So I'd just like to hear your experience.
I can't really give you a short answer to that, because as bad as things were during the 90s and growing up and everything, it was like, not sadism, but there was like you kind of enjoyed the ride.
Apart from the Stuart Pearce year.
Yeah, well, that was the funny thing about it. Stuart Pearce was the 05-06 season. 06-07.
06-07.
Yeah,
didn't score any goals.
Yeah, didn't score a goal at home for like 6 months. And so it kind of felt like, oh, it can't get any worse than this. Even when we were down in the 3rd division now at League One, it's strange. When September 2008 came along, I mean, bearing in mind we'd had a year before under Sven-Göran Eriksson with an owner who I think is in prison now, anti-tax.
Yeah.
It was strange. You kind of, that summer, we were just hopeful that the club would carry on and just wanted someone to take over that would look after it. And we kind of won the lottery from a footballing point of view and from a fan point of view with Sheikh Mansour. So the change in how it was as being a fan, it was like, wow, we've won the lottery. There was all these promises, you're going to sign this player, all right, it's never going to happen overnight that your club's going to transform and become this dominant Premier League force that we are now. But it's been, every time we've achieved something, you kind of feel like, oh, it's never going to get any better, because you've got so used to how bad the dark times were. And then the next season we eclipse it. You know, 2010-11 season, beating Man United in the semi-final at Wembley. That was like, you know, for me, that was a real turning point for City in the new age. And I thought, oh, it can never get any better. And then we beat Stoke, won the FA Cup, and it did 35 years of trophylessness, made United fans take down that banner that they had at Old Trafford. And then the season after, you know, possibly the greatest Premier League moment of all time, Aguero scores against QPR. How do you think that's going to get any better? And then last season, we've got the best manager in the world, and we're playing perhaps the most exquisite football in the world at the moment too. And we get 100 points on the last day of the season, storm the league, and it's just like, whatever's next, it's going to take a lot to top what we've done so far. It's been nothing but enjoyable. That's the thing. And almost a dream, really, considering how bad things were.
Well, that's awesome to hear, David. I'm sure that was somewhat painful for you being a United fan. So I'd like to get, you know, maybe your thoughts on living through kind of the Sir Alex Ferguson years and maybe the transition. So, you know, from, you know, how that was all handled with his retirement and the different managers they've appointed. So, you know, what's been your perspective on all of that?
I think, of course, growing up through 30 years, we were spoiled. And I think that's the kind of thing that I hope City fans look at and realise that, a bit like every generation, you have your highs and your lows. They're now probably starting to reach the point where they're starting to have those highs, and they've just got to be careful that at some point the lows will come again. And for United, I think for United fans in general, I think people need to take a step back and go, we're not going to be challenging. We're not organised in a way that City are. City have kind of built over 10 years, and even Mourinho kind of gave a typical Mourinho backhanded compliment where he was asked about the kind of investigations into money, and he kind of said, you need that kind of to build to start with, but then it's about organisation, it's about getting the right people, it's about building the structures, and that's what City have done really well over the past 10 years to get to this point now. I think United have gone the opposite way, and I think when Fergie left, more importantly, possibly when David Gill left, who was the chief executive, I think that's when the trouble started to really show. Because a bit like Peter Kenyon before David Gill, there was a lack of focus on football. It's more about the business. And I think the Glazers like the business element because the business model's working, and therefore aren't overly concerned about the pitch and how we're performing. As long as people are still paying the money, buying the shirts, buying whatever products they're advertising in far off lands, I think that's the kind of idea that, as a United fan, kind of hurts a little bit. That you kind of exploited a little bit more than we were in the past.
Yeah, and I don't want to harp too much on it, but so I just like to get your thoughts on how the season is going from somebody who is, in England and is a United fan. Like, what has been your perspective on this season?
I suppose the kind of overline is disappointment. We're not performing to the kind of standards that you'd expect. When you look at the players that we have in the squad, you'd expect more. I do think that we're not going to be challenging City. I think, in all honesty, they are almost a league above a lot of the teams in the Premier League at the moment. But to not be closer to kind of Tottenham, Chelsea, Arsenal is the bit that kind of bites. I think Liverpool is starting to look stronger and stronger, which as a United fan is probably more painful than City doing well. But yeah, it's that kind of idea of we seem to be losing ground as opposed to gaining ground. And I just think that comes from a kind of a lack of direction from the manager. It seems to be that we have no kind of game plan. It seems to be we play this pedestrian type of football that doesn't get us anywhere, and we don't exploit the gaps. The kind of thing that I always look at is you look at the space that the likes of Sterling gets and Sané when he's playing and players like that, and you look at the space that United kind of pacey players get behind. There doesn't seem to be that space, and we're not playing the right type of football for those players. And I think that's kind of what Mourinho's got to learn is you've got to play the right type of football for the players you've got.
Absolutely. Paul, and so conversely, how are you feeling about City's season thus far?
It's going all right. Could be doing a bit better.
Haven't you got less points this season?
Which, I don't know I can't remember, to be honest with you. Last season was a bit of a drunken dream. I think it's going great. Sadly, we dropped points. Well, the two games that we have dropped points in terms of Liverpool away, Mahrez taking a penalty. Doesn't matter. Manager's call. Shame we couldn't get a win there. And then the Wolves game, it's another case for VAR, isn't it? With Willy Bowley's handball. No, I think it's near perfect, and hopefully things will start to get even better when Kevin De Bruyne gets back to full fitness and we can press on. But it would be nice to try and push on in the European competition a bit as well, because that's where I think we need to take that next step as a club before people will acknowledge how good we really are. Because all right, being Centurions and champions and everything and dominating possession, we are brilliant at that. And honestly, I would rather win the Premier League 3 times over than have to win the Champions League. But if that's what it takes to get people to actually acknowledge how good you are, then that's what we've got to do.
All right, that is really cool, interesting perspective there. So let's transition a little bit from the domestic game to the international game. It is the international break. England had a match earlier today, and I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on the Nations League. You know, your perspective. England had a comeback today. I didn't watch the match, but I did follow the scoreline, and they ended up winning their group, and they go on to, I believe, the playoffs. So what has been your perspective on the Nations League? Is it something that you're excited about? Is it still too new? Does it happen too soon after the World Cup? So I'd love to just get your thoughts on that.
You're a better answer this than I am.
I think like a lot of people, we were both fairly skeptical of it. It felt like another kind of UEFA tournament that was just being kind of thrust upon the game. However, I think in hindsight now, when you look at it, because the teams are of similar kind of strengths, it's far more competitive than going into European qualifiers where you could be playing Andorra followed by San Marino followed by Germany, you know, where you don't get that kind of flow of games, whereas this is kind of almost game after game you play in kind of competitive football, which can only bode well for when you get into tournaments. And it's a tournament to win. At the end of the day, you don't go into tournaments to finish second or third, you go into them to win. So hopefully, now we've got out of the group stage, and we've probably had one of the toughest groups, to be able to go and be one of the best 4 teams in Europe and hopefully come back with some form of trophy. We'll kind of feel good, especially in preparation for the Euros.
Yeah, I think until we won away at Spain last month, not that many people in England really cared about it. But because we went to Spain and won, and now I think it's the semi-finals, the way the competition works in Portugal in June, isn't it? Yeah, now it's something to look forward to. And like David says, playing against teams of a better quality and strength, it's more fun to watch. You don't want to see us win 8-0 against a team full of taxi drivers, do you? It's not. That's a waste of time. And I mean, personally, we've had this conversation before. The whole concept of having international breaks in domestic football really angers us. And I don't think we're alone in that. So at least when they're playing and they're taking a break from the Premier League and the domestic games, at least now the matches kind of mean something. That's, at that point of view, I think.
I think for kind of an England perspective, the fact that it's come so soon after the World Cup is probably not a bad thing, because the kind of momentum after the World Cup, it's probably the most positive kind of feeling around the national team that there's been for probably since 1996, when we had the Euros. So it's that kind of idea that finally there's some kind of positive momentum, and we seem to be playing good football with kind of without kind of jeopardising kind of the national approach. It's no longer just kind of lots of hard men in midfield making tackles and a few kind of number 10s trying to score from outside the box. It's actually kind of a tactical approach is forming. We're looking like we're playing more continental football as opposed to typical English football, which is how the Premier League works.
We've got a style now. We've got a game plan. We've got an actual team. Right? Whereas before, well, pretty much for the last however many years, it's been a case of we have 11 half decent players and no real strategy. It's kind of hope that individual brilliance will take us over the line. But like David says, the way that we've become more fluid and continental, it does get people more up for it. You have a bit more confidence and belief in the team.
Yeah, oh, that is awesome to hear, because things are not going great for the U.S. and we are kind of in the opposite camp. And so, being that you guys are England based, I'd love to get your thoughts on just your perception of the sport in this country. So, Bros Talking Soccer, we're over in the USA. Your thoughts on whether it's culture or MLS, just from a high level perspective. What do you guys think about the sport in this country? I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts.
I love the enthusiasm that Americans have for soccer. I do have some reservations about the format of the league, and I think there's a real good platform in America to try and develop a league that could rival the European ones. But there are also rules in place which are going to prevent that from ever happening. I would say, just before I forget, that if you want your national team to do well, you need to get a new coach or a coach.
So we recorded a podcast before this one. I went off. We talked about that on this week's podcast.
Yeah, just get a manager, just any kind of coach, you know.
Yeah.
But in terms of the MLS, because of the connection with City, about 3 years ago, was it 2015, when the CFG set up New York City, I did invest a bit of time in watching it, mainly because I wanted to see David Villa play, because he's just a phenomenal player. And I do think it's a great league for young players to so in some cases get a second chance. Like Jack Harrison was dropped from Manchester United's academy. He goes to New York City, does quite well, and then he's back over here. He's on loan at Leeds at the moment, so that's good for him. And the way that you can effectively get scholarships and fall into a competitive league like that, I think is great. But at the same time, the standard overall, it's just there's a lot of work to be done. I do like the fact that MLS fans are very passionate. I would say that some of the chants I've heard, they just is it Seattle Sounders where they do that fight and win, and it's just that guy. There's a YouTube clip and it's a guy with a microphone and he's got huge. His eyes are massive and he's trying to get the crowd going. And I don't know. I just want the ground to swallow me whole when I'm watching. It's incredibly cringeworthy. But no, I think the game is on the up, and what helps the American game is the fact that it's one where younger people seem to be getting on board with, and it would help if the national team were performing better. You'd see a great level of enthusiasm, but I think the format of the league needs to change before the standard will change, and that's just an outsider's observation. Having said that, though, there are good things. The salary cap, because MLS is run really as a franchise, like most American sports. You know, I'm a big fan of ice hockey, so I do watch quite a lot of NHL and things. But I don't like the franchise concept of American sports. I think clubs should develop, become organic, and get a bit of tribalism going. It's not right for a team to be uprooted and move to a city, and it just feels like it's not going to change. So there's no point me even venting about it any longer, really, is it? But I do feel that sometimes there's a lot of really good things and opportunities in American sports, but because of the culture, you kind of set yourself up for a fail with some of the rules you have in place. But I could talk for ages about that.
David, thoughts on American soccer?
Fairly similar sport. I do think that the lack of kind of jeopardy in the league, the no relegation kind of thing, takes away the kind of risk and the needing to go for it a little bit. I know you get to the playoffs and then through to actually winning the trophy, but it does feel like the lack of relegation. It also means that there's nothing for the teams below to aspire for, because they either try and become a franchise for MLS or they just stay where they are. And as you said before, when you were talking about Manchester, it does kind of mean you have one big club in a city, and then you might have a small club that is in a lower league or is in a smaller kind of town outside of the city that isn't really kind of getting the fan base and getting the popularity, but could have the players that could compete.
Yeah, that's a good point. And a good example of that's New York with the Cosmos. They obviously in the years of Pele, they were a huge force, I suppose. And then it was it might have been 10 years ago now. They tried to reboot it again, didn't they?
Yeah, Canada tried to be involved.
That was it, yeah. And because of you have to be a franchise to get into MLS. You're preventing growth, aren't you? And like David says, with there being no jeopardy at the bottom. If you watch the Premier League, you'll know that the fight for survival is, in most seasons, it's more exciting than the actual fight for the title.
Especially when clubs are running away with 100 points.
But I just think that bringing that side of the competition into it would make everybody raise the game and would help improve the sport overall. But
yeah,
we can't change that. That problem's too big for us.
Yeah, well, no, I love hearing different perspectives. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I have tons of thoughts on all that, but let's stick. I want to hear from you guys. People already hear enough from me. Let's get back to Over the Bar. So, do you guys have any? What does the future hold? Any exciting projects coming up? Are you expanding coverage? Are you looking for anything? What's going on at Over the Bar for you guys?
Well, I need to start writing again because it's been a few months since I've actually done anything. I think the last thing I did was a quiz. So for me, it's just getting back into the kind of groove. It's one of those where sometimes it's quite difficult to produce content over and over again, because especially in written format, it's very difficult to sometimes get your opinions across in a way that you don't necessarily want to kind of upset everyone. But yeah, so for me, it's just getting back into the groove.
Yeah, and like David said, we don't write for the sake of it. We write because we want to, and when we pick a subject, we want to make it engaging, because one of the good things about the platform is that I could have an opinion on it, and I want someone else to read it and then tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong, but not just yes or no, why they think the way they do, so that I might learn. It's that engagement factors go through it. And in terms of going forward, I think we are trying to make it so that the content's more regular now. I think the last 2 weeks, we've pretty much had something fresh every single day. And going forward, we'd like to have that. We are looking for someone to, a couple more people to get involved. We wouldn't mind someone who could write about Spanish football more regularly, because La Liga is a fantastic league. And as much as I would like to write about it, I don't have the time to do that, as well as other things. And League Two as well. There's a lot of clubs over here. That's the 4th tier of English football, but a lot of them clubs still have a huge following, and we want those fans to have a voice. And then, going forward, we're going to keep it fresh. And everything we've done, we've built slowly. It's been done. We've been very measured, I think. We've never tried to set a target that we can't meet, and that delicate approach is what's helped us. We're very lucky. We've got quite a large social media following with very little advertising or anything like that. We don't, the site isn't monetized or anything like that. We don't do clickbait or anything like that. So we just want to keep up the ethos that we have, and just make it more regularly, and see where that takes us, I think.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The next step is just hitting that 5,000 followers, because I think we're
very close.
34 off it or something like that.
So listeners.
Get following us on Twitter.
Yeah, listeners, we have their Twitter linked in the video description, podcast show notes. So if you're not following them, you should be. So definitely give them a follow. And so we also have the URL linked, and we have your personal Twitters. Twitters. I guess that's right. Way to say that. It sounds weird, but I guess that's right. Yeah, accounts linked. So be sure to give all of them a follow. Guys, I have one last question for you, but is there anything else you'd like to plug, or anything, questions for me before I ask my final question?
We're both very modest. We don't want to oversell ourselves. But if anyone isn't following Bros Talking Soccer that follows us, they need to follow you, and you need to follow the Soccer Tavern as well, and Fan Futsal.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. That is fantastic. So again, I try to keep things positive. A lot of negativity in the world. So the last question I want to ask you guys is, what is the thing you're most excited about happening kind of in the world of soccer right now? Could be anything, however you want to take the question. So David, let's start with you.
Probably the United women's team doing quite well at the moment. So from a United perspective, I'm going to take that. But England getting to the semi-finals of the Nations League, I suppose, is a positive moment of the day.
Yeah, the women's game's growing quite well over here, which is nice. England stole the Sunday for us, didn't they? That's good. For me, I'm looking forward to VAR coming in the Premier League and the Champions League. But the most exciting thing is just City's next game. Every game that we play is exciting now.
All right. Well, I love it. Paul and David, thank you so much for joining me here. Can you remind people where to find you?
Yeah, you can find us at Over the Bar. We're on Twitter at Over the Bar FB. I'm at Paul McGarrigy. You're at David Over the Bar. Is that right? Yeah. I know you can find us on there. otpfootball.net.
Absolutely. So thank you guys again so much for being here. Listeners, thank you guys for tuning in and listening. Be sure to go check out Over the Bar and give them a follow. Get them up to 5,000 followers, please. And hope everybody has a great day. See ya. All right, cool. People that have joined on YouTube, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, we'll talk to you sometime soon. See ya.